So it's really great to see everybody. Thanks for joining us for the first of these Teacher Development Network meetings of the academic year. We've had some really good feedback about the ones we were hosting last year. Obviously, last year there was lots of information we needed to share with schools as we headed towards September and the reforms of the government's teacher retention strategy really kicked in. So the introduction of the early career framework and the national professional qualifications. We're delighted that some of those programs are now up and running, like the early career teachers program that we're delivering with Ambition Institute, and we're very close now to starting to deliver the MPQ. So really exciting times, but frantic pace, and really feel for you guys in school who are having to put a lot of these things in place pretty quickly. Really pleased today to have colleagues joining us from both the Teaching School Hub but also the West Yorkshire Maths Hub. So Sam's with us today, and Sam's going to start off the agenda talking about the support that's available from the Maths Hub, a bit more in depth than what we've had today. Sometimes the maths hubs and the curriculum hubs find it difficult to get into schools, so we thought it'd be really useful for them to really explain the fine detail that sits behind their programs and what's available. They have a wealth of offers, but it's sometimes confusing to separate out what's available and really understand how it could support your school. We'll then focus in on the delivery model of the National Professional Qualifications, because these look significantly different to what we've seen before. So again, I just want to try and guide you quickly through those changes. I have also produced a video that's available for you to view outside of today's meeting. So again, you can revisit that and maybe support discussions with colleagues ahead of the 12th of October deadline for MPQ applications. And then finally, Emma's going to give us an update in terms of the early career teachers program and some of the experiences we've had so far and some key messages linked to that. So that's the agenda. 45 minutes, action packed. We are recording the event as you've seen, so if you want to watch it back or share the recording with anybody, please do so. But Sam, we'll hand straight over to you to introduce yourself and to talk about the West Yorkshire Maths Hub.
Perfect. Can you hear me okay, Paul, for a start?
Sounding good.
Perfect. Right, so we're quite a small group this afternoon, so there's multiple benefits to that. One of the benefits is that if you've got any kind of direct questions about anything to do with your school or any support you'd like, feel free to unmute or pop it in the chat box, because I want you to come away feeling like you kind of understand the offer as well that we're offering, and I don't want you to miss anything that you might be able to access, really. I'm going to start kind of with two parts to this kind of talk with you this afternoon. Firstly, as Paul mentioned there, I want to give you an update on what we've done so far in West Yorkshire, because obviously we're now into the 7th year of the Maths Hub programme, and it might be interesting for you to find out a little bit about the impact we've made in sort of the Bradford area and the West Yorkshire area. And then for the second part, I want you to kind of feel like you're kind of equipped to know what you could access for free for your staff and what's available for you to access this year. So I'm going to give you a whistle-stop tour of kind of a very abridged history of obviously the Maths Hub programme. So set up in 2014, it was funded really, I suppose, is to raise standards in mathematics across England. Now, it's borrowed sort of heavily from East Asian influences such as Singapore, China, Shanghai. You probably all know this already. And obviously, if you've done work at the Maths Hub before, you may have come to something like a Shanghai teacher exchange, where the Shanghai teachers come over and we watch lessons and things like that. There I am in the middle, very, very proudly in Shanghai. But anyway, so all this is still hopefully going on. Probably not in the same way this year, because I think with COVID it's kind of changed things really. But the teaching for mastery model, I think, is quite well understood, generally speaking. I'd be interested as well to know of the people that are here, the schools you work with, who's actually part of a teaching for mastery work group, because we're now getting to a point where we're getting that magical 2023 deadline of the tender for the Maths Hub programme, ending, that term ending. So obviously it offers a bit of free CPD, also offers school-to-school support, and I don't think it will necessarily be around forever, that funding. So just want to make sure that you're aware of that, and I'll give you some details later on about how you can access it for your school if you've never been involved with it before. So this is the pathway, I suppose. The Mastery Readiness Programme was invented really as a way to kind of work with those schools who maybe not quite ready for that school improvement opportunity just yet. So focusing on things like mathematical mindsets, establishing a vision for maths in their school, looking at things like school systems and arithmetical proficiency. So very much kind of looking at those school systems before we then start looking at the pedagogy and thinking about how we might develop that in school. If historically you've been involved with a Teaching for Mastery work group, but perhaps, you know, for whatever reason, you might not be involved with one at the moment, you could access what's called the Sustaining Work Group, or what we call them as network sessions, really. So these are regional groups that are set up with the idea that it's still about developing that Teaching for Mastery, but supporting the maths leads in your schools to embed those practices and to support you with things like, you know, catch up with COVID recovery, implementing new curriculums. What else do they do? Sort of supporting year group planning. So we've got each year group has a particular focus. So your year 6 teachers can attend an event, your year 5 teachers can attend an event, etc., to support their development as well. So not just those 2 participant teachers as well. And again, if you know, I'll give my email address at the end. If anybody wants more information about that, I'll be absolutely delighted to pass on those details to you. So, you know, Teaching for Mastery is kind of the flagship of what we offer, but we do offer other things as well. So, for example, we've got subject knowledge enhancement for early career teachers. So I know Paul mentioned that obviously that's something you're running as a teaching school hub, but for the mathematical side of it, we offer the same just for the second year early career teachers at the moment. We also offer things for support for initial teacher training providers. We've got things to do with 5 to 8 continuity, so that progression from primary school to secondary school, and there's much more. I'll show you a bit more about that in a second as well. Just as a kind of a reminder, if you haven't been involved with the Maths Hub project before, it is quite different to typical professional development. As in, you know, we don't just come to the school and stand in front of you in terms of a staff meeting. You know, they've got to be collaborative. So, you know, participants are asked to engage and think about what they're doing. Also, we're trying to think about as well this time aspect, is that teachers are given opportunities over the course of a longer sustained period of time to develop that practice as well. So, you know, I think just from someone, for myself who's run these work groups, I really can't kind of stress enough, really, especially that second year. The teachers that you get through that program are no longer the same teachers. They develop so much. They're just so much deeper thinkers. And I really would recommend, if you haven't already, to get your teacher signed up for that program, really, whether it's secondary or primary. So what have we done so far then? So over the past 7 years of the program, we've worked with 477 primary, secondaries and post-16, and that includes over 2,000 participations with our work we've done. Now, to drill down into a little bit about the regional data, we've got some information here about how the programs have kind of gone over time. So you can see on the left here, you can sort of, you know, visually see that, for example, Leeds, at the start of the program, had a really big, you know, took up a lot of the work, and actually we worked with a lot of schools over their first couple of years. And as time's gone on, you can sort of see that the participation rates of the total schools we worked with is kind of shrunk a little bit. The kind of priority areas for us, and the reason why I thought it was really important to talk with Paul and yourselves really is, you know, Bradford in terms of primary is really successful. You know, Bradford's been one of those areas we've done a lot of work with, but we're still, you know, 30% of primary schools have never done a Teaching for Mastery work group with us. So I think at this point, it's just to say, you know, if you don't access it, then you're never going to be able to get access to that funding, or the funding might never kind of repeat around. So it's just really stressing that, you know, now or never really. And especially secondary as well. You know, we really want to kind of, if you're attached to a secondary school or you're part of a secondary school, we'd love to hear from you as well. So kind of over these 7 years, I don't know whether you would all agree with kind of these, but one of the things we've noticed, I suppose, is that teacher turnover, especially in the Bradford area, seems to be one of the kind of the hot topics. And we're really keen as well to support schools who maybe have done Teaching for Mastery, but the teachers have changed quite a lot. So if that's if that's your school, please get in contact. We've got, you know, in the region as well, we've got lots of inexperienced teachers. So that's kind of why we've got the ECT programs. We've got the SKTM programs as well to really support that. And as you can sort of see from the the graph before, that secondary uptake in post-16 is lagging behind that primary really. So what's kind of the next step for the hub really? The next step is what's called the Mastering Number Programme. I imagine quite a few of you in the room will have already signed up for a Mastering Number Programme. Unfortunately, the kind of recruitment for that has ended because it officially started yesterday. But that's something to kind of keep an eye out for next year. So we're working over 2,000 primary schools across England, and it's looking at those, there's children who are counting on fingers in year 1, 2, and even all the way up through school, and how to address that. And the next thing, as I mentioned before, is that emphasis on sustaining teaching for mastery, which is engaging with local network meetings. So, people in your region, getting you together and discussing how we might improve maths, in our schools, really. And one of the things we're doing, I suppose, is we want to consider our legacy about what we're going to achieve over the past what we're going to want to. For example, in 2023, the project were to disappear. We want to hopefully feel like we've got people in the community in West Yorkshire who could carry on the good work of West Yorkshire Maths Hub. So we're really looking at developing leads in the community, which you can see through some of our work groups. And we really want as well to start, branching out into the wider community of West Yorkshire. And, part of that sustaining network is about developing those little pockets of excellence across West Yorkshire. So we're really interested in kind of getting out to the local community, really. So has anybody got any questions about, I think it's kind of relayed information to you. Has anybody got any questions about that so far?
If you just want to come off mute and throw any questions at Sam, that'd be great.
Yeah. It might be this. The next part, I suppose, is what you might be thinking about. Yeah, this is the meat on the bones, I suppose. So I'll crack on with the meat on the bones for you. So what can you access this year? So what I'm really interested from you as a collective, and this is going to really benefit us as the Maths Hub, is what are your current needs? Rather than saying what's available, we want you to tell us what you'd like. That would be incredibly helpful for us. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to post a sharing link into the chat box. And I don't know if you've ever used it before, but it's a platform where you can put like Post-it notes and everyone can sort of see them. Now, if you open up that link, it would be really useful to, if your school's got any particular needs or anything that you think that you'd like offering in regards to the teaching of maths, we'd love to know what your thoughts were. So, for example, if you're thinking actually we've got a lot of EALs is a real issue for us, and actually it seems to, really come out in mathematics, that might be, something that you'd like more work on. And if there's a really clear themes that I can see that this might lead us to something called the Research and Innovation Work Group, where we can see that this area's got this big need that not being met by our work groups, and that's when we can offer something to yourselves, and we'll find a work group leader who can lead on that project. So I'll be quiet for a second just to give you a chance to pop any thoughts you've got on the Jamboard. If it's not working for you, feel free to put them into the chat box and I can add them to the Jamboard for you. But I'll give you a couple of seconds to have a little bit of a go at that. So thank you.
Sam, just whilst people are typing away, just a quick question in general. So schools obviously recording the support they need. Obviously, we no longer have any new specialist leaders of education designations. Is there scope for schools to offer up their capacity to the West Yorkshire Maths Hub to get involved with supporting other schools with a maths focus?
I think that would probably be on a case-by-case basis, Paul. So I think it would be, in the first instance, would it be met by a work group that we already offer? So if it was a school development priority, so if that's something you're interested in, that might be something that you could get in contact with us, and we could commission some support if that was a need there. And again, if it was something that perhaps was a local priority, that could be something we could offer as a work group. But again, if anybody's wanting the support for a group of schools in a trust, perhaps get in contact, and there's definitely things we can do, because we do have quite a lot of maths specialists who could possibly offer some support if that was the case, really.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question, Paul?
Yeah, I think so. It's just, it's looking for being an SLE is great CPD for colleagues, you know, but with that new designations not happening anymore, is whether the colleagues could make themselves available to you to lead a hub, sorry, a work group, for example, if you know, they had a particular skill set. So I know there's some great mathematicians on this call, you know, so how can they make their capacity aware? How can they make you aware of their capacity to contribute to system-wide improvement?
Absolutely, yeah. That's Paul. That would be absolutely something we're really interested in, because we have what's called the Local Leaders Maths Education, which is a group of people who run work groups or have got I suppose a keen interest in maths in the West Yorkshire region. And if they're in the call today, I'll give you my email address and please get in contact, because we're always looking for new work group leads. For example, we're running an SEND group at the moment this year, which is for schools, for schools who cater for SEND. But we're looking to find somebody who would lead a group for non-special schools. So that would be something we'd be interested in as well. So in anybody who's got a particular set of skills, to quote Liam Neeson, would be very welcome with us. Okay, so that's really helpful. So I've got so many to have a look at. This is really fantastic. Thank you much, everybody. And I'm going to pass this on to the team as well, and we will we'll be able to kind of use this for our leadership aspect of it. So thank you very much for that, everybody. The last thing I'm just going to broach with you this afternoon is going to be just where you can find things and pass them on to people. So if you go onto the website, which looks a bit like this, westyorkshireMathsHub.co.uk, under work groups, you can find something called the work group brochure, which takes you through to something that looks a bit like this, which is kind of a one-stop shop for all the work groups and applications you can get access to this year. So they're all hyperlinked. So if you just click on the link, it will take you to, so let's say, for example, you've got some teaching assistants you want to develop in your school. If you click through to there, it gives you a bit of information about the program. And then if you click the get involved, it takes you through to the application form as well. So everything that's to do with, applications and what you can get this year is also on there. And hopefully that'll be very useful for you. And just the last thing to mention is, if anybody who have never been involved with Teaching for Mastery before, but we're interested in seeing what it looks like, we've got what's called a practice exchange open, which is it's a morning event, which is a couple of hours, where you can go to a school in Sowerby Bridge near Halifax, and one of our head teacher advocates is opening up for people to come watch a lesson and to just be able to chat with the head teacher about how they've run Teaching for Mastery in their school. So this is an agenda about what you'd be getting involved with. So looking at a lesson, chance to see books, chance to talk with the head teacher, and they can also request specific one-to-one time with Alison if that's something you're interested in as well. But it's for those schools who haven't been involved in Teaching for Mastery. But if you're eligible, but you're not sure if you're eligible, go to that brochure and have a look through there. And if you want to get access to that, there's a couple of email addresses here. So there's khenshaw@trinitymat.org is one of them, or you can email the hub directly, which is wymh@westyorkshiremathshub.co.uk as well. And has anybody got any questions before I hand over back to Paul? Good question. I think it's going to be year 6, Shamim. I think it's year 6.
Thank you.
So there's one day. It's the 11th of is it the 11th? I can't remember now. 10th of November, Caroline. But if you can't make that, Caroline, but you're interested in things like that, let us know. And if there's enough demand, we can find an alternative time. If Alison will be willing to do that, and that'll be something we could do as well. And I'll pop my email address into the chat box as well. If anybody has got any queries about anything, please do get in contact.
Thanks, Sam. Could you also post into the chat the link to the booklet that you referred to with all the programs? That'd be great.
Definitely.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks, Sam. Could I ask Sam just to stop sharing? I don't know if anybody's got any final questions before we move on for Sam. Okay, so we'll move on and we'll have a look at the delivery model for the MPQs. So bear with me whilst I play the presentation. If you remember from last year, sometimes my computer doesn't quite like my screen sharing on Zoom So hopefully everybody can see that now. So as I say, we're all probably quite familiar with the delivery model for the MPQs of old, where we tended to go out of school for 4 or 5 days worth of input, involving some school visits, and then we completed some written assignments. So I completed MPQ EL during lockdown 1, and I had to write 2 assignments of 4,000 words each based on projects that I'd led. That model has absolutely gone. It looks nothing like that here on in. So for both the new and the reformed National Professional Qualifications, the delivery model is unrecognisable from what we've seen before. It's a much more research-informed delivery model as well. So if you're familiar with the work of Tim Pulley, an Australian researcher who codified the process of effective teacher professional development, you can see a lot of those principles coming through in these new models. So what I'm going to try and do is, using this diagram as a bit of a guide and zooming in on different elements of it, I'm going to try and talk you through how the delivery model looks different. As I said before, this is also available as a recording for you to watch back at another time. So when you look at all our MPQ programs on our website, so I don't know if you're interested in the MPQ for leading teacher development, for example, there's an apply box, and within that apply box, there's a delivery model box, and within that delivery model box is a link through to this video to watch it. So this is the delivery model, and I'll talk you through the different elements, focusing on specialist MPQs, but I'll also introduce the leadership ones as we go along. So the first thing to say is that the programs commence with a 2-week induction period. So within that 2 weeks, participants are going to watch 2 30-minute webinars at a time that's convenient to them. So that's just to get them orientated and up and running and ready to commence these programs. The first programs are going to start delivery in November. So, this is that period really before Christmas that they're going to be engaged in. With the specialist MPQs, then participants will join a 1-day conference. So we'll be hosting that, and our visiting fellows, the new fancy name for a facilitator, will be delivering those events on our behalf. If you're doing a leadership MPQ, you've actually got 2 conferences that you'd attend, but the specialist ones have 1 conference very early doors. So within a specialist MPQ, colleagues will undertake 6 courses. So we're talking about 1 course per half term during the programme. If you're doing a leadership MPQ, then you're going to do 9 of these courses. So really exploring a theme in lots of detail. It's 9 for them because MPQs for leadership are spread over an 18-month period. So if we just take each of those courses that we've just seen on screen and break them down a little bit in terms of what the content looks like, the first thing we have is an insight module. So this is where colleagues are really going to get into the detail behind that theme that they're studying. So within behaviour, for example, there's particular aspects of behaviour that they may be looking at and really developing their knowledge. The application model will then really support them to apply that knowledge. So they're developing the knowledge during the insight module, self-study using StepLab, our online resource, but then they're using the application model to work with a buddy, another colleague on the programme, to really understand the detail that sits behind that aspect of the programme and think about how they'd use it in their own setting. What we also have is 2-hour clinics. So these are about supporting formative assessments, so helping the participants to really understand where they're at on their journey and how they're making progress. So again, one of our visiting fellows, one of our facilitators, will lead these 2-hour sessions. So we're talking about one of those happening every half term. In addition to that, there are 1-hour communities, and this isn't about a facilitated event. This is about the participants of the programme coming together online and supporting each other to solve problems that they're facing. So it's a bit of a safe space, really, with nobody overseeing this session. It's about them supporting each other. So what we can see there is in a specialist MPQ, 6 courses. Each of the courses following a regular pattern of self-study, really getting to know the content, thinking about how that's applied, working with their buddy, some support from a visiting fellow once every 6 weeks, but also support from their peers through those communities. Now, with a leadership MPQ, particularly MPQEL and the MPQH additional support offer, there is also support available in terms of coaching. So only in those programs is a one-to-one coaching support offer available. So those colleagues get that support directly from a visiting fellow to think again about their own context and their support needs. Within MPQH, there's also that opportunity to visit schools, and a really important part of the programme. If you are doing MPQH with the additional support offer, you'll also get the opportunity to visit the school of your coach. So that's an additional enhancement to that programme for head teachers who are in their first 2 years in post. Towards the end of the programme, of course, is the assessment. So we have online support in terms of a facilitated asynchronous webinar, 2 of those in fact, to support you to understand what the assessment requirements are. And then we're going to be entering this 3-month window linked to the assessment period. So that 3-month period covers from when the assessment for the MPQ is set all the way through to when you're receiving the outcome of that. So a very short, tight window. Assessment looks really different to what we've seen before. Gone have the 2 4,000 word essays that I had to write, for example. So within this window, what you'll be presented is you'll have an 8-day window to read a minimum 2,000 word case study that covers a lot of the aspects of your programme. Within that 8 days, you're expected to submit a 1,500 word response to that case study. What would you do in these scenarios? What's the theory behind your thinking and your practical experience behind that as well? And at that point, the assessment is done once you've submitted that response to the case study. In terms of how your assignment is marked, we're using comparative judgment. So that's very much about looking at all the assignments that are submitted from all the participants and ranking them from strongest to least strong. A really robust way of assessing. There's lots of good research into comparative judgment, and Ambition Institute fought quite hard, I think, to use comparative judgment as a means of assessing. The other thing to be conscious of if you're undertaking MPQ is that you also need to have completed 90% of the programme to successfully pass the programme. So, you can't just attend the conferences and then skip some of the courses. Actually, engagement is monitored as well. So that's it really in terms of the delivery model. Apologies for not sharing my screen at the start, but it's very much a different delivery model for the MPQs going forward. A lot more flexibility in there. Teachers can access the courses at a time that's suitable to them. When they're collaborating with other colleagues, then that's at a time that's mutually agreed with their buddy. It's only the conferences that are going to be at a very fixed time. In terms of assessment dates, they will be given to participants at the start of the course. If you're starting an MPQ in November this year, then your assessment will be in November next year. So it's quite easy to work out when those windows will be, but we do have the exact dates to share as well. So very much a change to what we've seen before. Just a quick reminder, this is sorry.
Will the conferences be local?
Yeah, so obviously we'll look at where participants are joining us from, and we'll look to make those conferences as accessible as possible. So with most of the MPQs, we're looking at having about 30 participants. MPQH will be about 20. So we'll look to be using, wherever we possibly can, a school-based venue to really host those conferences and make them available. We have delivery partners who are providing visiting fellows in Leeds, Bradford, Skipton, and so on. So we'll be looking at where they're based and trying to use them as the hosts. So this is the website for the MPQs, teachingschoolhub.co.uk. UK/MPQ. From that page, you'll be signposted to all the 6 MPQs that are available. We're not delivering MPQ EL ourselves, but it's available for you to sign up to. So you can find out more about each of those. There's an additional tile there as well, which will give you a link through to information about the scholarships and eligibility. From that link, you can download lists to explore what your school is eligible for, what funding is available for your school. All schools are eligible for MPQ for leading teacher development. That's fully funded to all schools. That's really going to be central to a whole host of reforms that are coming through the system. So it's a really good one to look at. If you're a head teacher within your first 2 years in role, MPQH is also funded with the option of the additional support offer on top of that. For schools then that are in the top 30th percentile for pupil premium, all MPQs are fully funded for them at this moment in time. So again, there's no limit as to how many MPQs your staff can undertake. You just need to think about your capacity to release those colleagues to be able to access them. But as part of government's COVID recovery, there is just short of £200 million worth of funding available to fund scholarships. So absolutely a great opportunity for schools to consider those opportunities as an important part of COVID recovery. Okay, I'll stop sharing there, having started late, and we'll take any questions that colleagues might have. Otherwise, we'll jump across to Emma for the Early Career Teachers Programme. Over to you, Emma.
Oh, thank you, Paul, and apologies, I have left this Zoom on at least 3 occasions, but not through any fault of my own. It's mainly been to do with technical issues. Okay, so I'm going to share a very brief update around the early career framework and its implementation up to date. Am I screen sharing yet, Paul?
You are. You're doing a better job than I did.
Excellent. Oh, well, there you go. Brownie points for me. Fabulous. Okay, so as I'm not sure if you have early career teachers on our programme or indeed on the Ambition programme. As Paul has said, we are delivery partners for Ambition. And this year we've got just short of 200 early career teachers on the programme. And we're delighted to say it has got off to a brilliant start. And I just wanted to give a few updates in terms of the expectations to make sure that engagement is as it should be as the programme commences and there on forward. So we've begun with our mentor conferences and early career teacher conferences that have gone brilliantly. And we've had engagement from all participants, bar one, would you believe, and that's short of 200 participants. But just to update you, the conferences moving forward, we have got a spring conference with dates to be sent out very shortly for early career teachers, and they will move now from virtual to face-to-face. And then in summer 2, we have got a conference, dates have been set for mentors, and that again will be face-to-face. But in terms of delivery from us as delivery partners, it is mainly the conferences and clinics that we do deliver through our visiting fellows. The clinics, now dates have been set and communication will go out to all ECTs and mentors next week regarding those dates. So your early career teachers will receive 3 clinics by expert practitioners spread out across the year, and same for mentors, they will receive 2 clinics and communication about those will go out at the beginning of next week. So what I really wanted to sort of just give a very, very brief overview of our roles and responsibilities, because we've had a lot of questions from head teachers and induction coordinators and mentors as the programme has begun. So just to clarify that in each school there should be an induction coordinator, an ECF induction coordinator, a mentor and an early career teacher. And the role of the induction coordinator in this is absolutely key, because they will oversee and support both the mentor and the early career teacher, making sure that the programme is embedded successfully in your schools. And in doing that, they need to be very, very familiar with the online platform in which the mentor and the early career teacher are accessing this programme, which is Step Lab, because on that platform they will be able to monitor coaching participation, teacher progress, look at action steps that have been set for early career teachers to really make sure that this entitlement is actually happening in your schools. That will also be monitored by ourselves at the Teaching School Hub, but also by Ambition. So it's really, really important that you make sure that your induction coordinators, those early career teacher leads, are really engaging with and monitoring on StepLab that all the things that should be taking place are taking place. Your mentor, the key role for your mentor at the moment is to make sure that the early career teacher is engaging with their online study modules on a weekly basis, and that they're delivering weekly instructional coaching to their early career teachers. Your early career teacher needs to make sure that they are engaging with their weekly online study modules and engaging with their mentor on a weekly basis. So just to sort of break that down for you, in terms of the two main things that your early career teachers should be doing every week is engaging with their study, and within that they will have an evidence summary to read, a video to watch, and then a quiz to complete, sort of a retrieval practice quiz, and that should take no longer than 45 minutes. The second thing that your early career teachers should be doing every week is engaging with instructional coaching with their mentor. And again, that should take no longer than 45 minutes. So it's just really me repeating these messages so the expectations are very clear out there. Weekly engagement for your mentor, simply that looks like this. There are three things that they have to really be aware of, and that is to familiarise themselves with the online study module content, and for your mentors that will take them 10-15 minutes to have a look at what actually is it that your early career teachers are engaging with that week within that module, because that then in turn will link to their instructional coaching cycle. So step 2 is to ensure the instructional coaching cycle is taking place. The first 15 minutes of that are observe and select, and within that 15 minutes it's an observation of an action step that has been set by your mentor. It's not a big recorded formal observation, it's a 15-minute observation of deliberate practice. And within that 15-minute observation, they are also selecting a new action step. Your mentors know all of this. I think I'm just repeating it to make sure that the messages are clear. And then they, in turn, make sure that they give feedback in a 45-minute weekly coaching session. And your mentors should be very, very clear that having attended the training of what the stages are within that feedback 45-minute weekly coaching session, the steps that they need to be going through using StepLab in terms of what that looks like in a very, very granular form. And that is me, quick, brief and whistle-stop tour. But if anybody has got any questions about the implementation of the early career teacher programme so far, then please do unmute or pop in the chat function.
Sorry, Emma. My mentor, I've got 2 mentors because I've got 3 ECTs, so 3 mentors, but they're unsure. Well, they were having a discussion whether they coach the ECT and then go and watch that, or do they watch first, then set targets from that?
I guess this is sort of the beginning of the cycle. So at the beginning of the cycle, you may your ECTs will have engaged with module 1 in behaviour, to B1, which I think is fundamentals, and within that, when they've accessed the self-study materials, the 45 minutes that we looked at previously in the pyramid, to get the cycle started, your mentor will then select an action step that's appropriate for them, that they're going to observe in their practice. So they will discuss an action step that's appropriate, that links to behaviour, that they're going to then put into practice in their classroom. And then when it's been observed, it would be assessed sort of on StepLab. There's success criteria, so they can sort of tick across the boxes as to whether they've met it or not. And then a new action step would be selected in line with the second module. Does that make more sense?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
The mentors were having a disagreement that they coach them and then watch them do what they've coached them,
Well,
And
it's
the other one was saying, no, let's watch them and then set targets from it.
as you begin, but in part they're both correct, because once the next target is set, part of the coaching session, and they are absolutely right, actually, within that feedback session, that's broken down into 4 parts. And one of those is, let me think, I've got them written down to hand, review. So the review, the last action step, then you model, the mentor models what the next action step looks like. So it's almost role play. So they are modeling what that looks like in action, and the ECT is analysing it, and the success criteria that creates that dialogue. And then the ECT practices in the same room, this takes place in the ECT's classroom, what that looks like as well. So it's almost like role play. So the ECT is practicing to the mentor on a number of occasions within the feedback session, the coaching cycle, and then they'll put it into practice in their classroom, and at a time that's agreed, that will be observed. Right. So they're both correct, actually, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions?
Dick's posted a comment in the chat that we'll pick up afterwards. It's just a colleague looking for some support. Okie doke. Great. Well, thanks for that, Emma. We'll move on. So that's the end of the session. We've covered everything there. If there's anything general that colleagues want to pick up on, then please feel free to just shout out, and we'll answer your question.